Hey y'all, I wanted to give y'all this beautiful view coming down here through the Ozarks, just crossed the Oklahoma state line from Arkansas, the Arkansas-Oklahoma state line. It's really beautiful country out here if you've never been out here. But I wanted to talk to y'all a second about this mass censorship going on in big tech and the exodus that Joe Rogan has expedited via his interview with Dr. Robert Malone and getting on Getter. I certainly applaud Rogan for pointing out the censorship of Twitter. The problem with it is that the site that he's leaving or that he's recommending, or that I don't know if he necessarily recommended it, but the one that he's kind of got everybody going to is a site called Getter, which is basically just an inferior version of Twitter. If I'll just put it to you like this, and I'm not just this isn't an assumption. Getter's already deleted and banned people. If Getter were to get as big as Twitter, it would be exactly like Twitter. So the question kind of becomes like, why? Like, why would you leave Twitter for an inferior version of Twitter? It kind of just gets back to like, look, either you're going to have censorship, either you're going to have censorship or you're not. I guess I should say this. Either you're going to have free speech or you're not going to have free speech. You can't draw any lines. And the only site that I've really seen that's like totally pretty much censorship free or totally free speech is Gab. Now, sure, you're going to get on there and you're going to deal with anti-Semitism, whatever the hell that means, and which is basically just criticism of Jews. And you're going to deal with some shit posting type stuff, but you're not going to get banned. And just like any other site, you can block people or you can follow who you want to follow. But the problem, here's what's happened with censorship, is it's created a vacuum. Actually, it's created an echo chamber. So pretty much every site now is just an echo chamber. Twitter's an echo chamber, Gab's an echo chamber, Reddit's an echo chamber, YouTube's an echo chamber. All these sites are just echo chambers now. The exchange of ideas is over. We no longer have free exchange of ideas, which has pretty much capped intellectualism. So we're not going to have, the way for all these people who are like, oh, fucking science and all this kind of stuff. Well, the scientific method is putting out a hypothesis and testing it. This is how people gain knowledge. This is how intellectual prowess is attained, by the exchange of ideas. So you put an idea out there and then you challenge it. People who don't want their ideas challenged are people who are worried about the validity of their ideas. So again, like, censorship has ruined the internet. The internet's just a dead concept. It's certainly an information system, but the internet as an idea to expand knowledge, and again, like, the expansion of knowledge comes with the exchange of ideas. And the exchange of ideas within an echo chamber isn't an exchange of ideas. It's just a conformity. It's just conformist chat. And you're just chatting with people who think the same things that you do. So you're not really expanding on knowledge, and you're not really expanding the concepts that you're trying to express within your ideas. So I think it's very important. In my opinion, and I say this somewhat humorously, Getter is just a version of like Grindr for like conservative types, boomer type conservatives or whatever. There's nothing going to be unique or cool about that. It's just going to be like Bill Mitchell tier conservatives. I think if Rogan really wanted to like expand really wanted to put something out there that was interesting, he would have joined Gab. because Gab actually has free speech. It's pretty much the only platform I've seen that has, I mean, as far as like social media platform, that truly has free speech. Facebook doesn't have it. Twitter certainly doesn't have it. I mean, and we see that what happened was we saw the beginning of the end with the censorship, and I think it was 2016 when a like far right Nazi white supremacist whatever guy by the name of Andrew Anglin, who ran Daily Stormer, was kicked off the internet for making that, for making fun of the chick who died in Charlottesville, and literally he was ostracized from the internet. And he came out and he said right then and there that when people didn't step up and defend his right of free speech, that it ultimately would open the door for everybody to become an Andrew Anglin. And he was exactly right. Regardless of how you feel about him, he was kicked off the internet for thought crime. And you saw once you can establish, once you can moralize speech and say, well, if we can determine that certain speech is bad and it's able to be censored, well, then that concept becomes 100% malleable. In other words, then the door is open for anybody to become a racist or an anti-Semite, because those things are subjective abstractions. The idea of being an anti-Semite or a Nazi or a racist or whatever, those things they're abstractions. And so whenever you're dealing in abstractions, I mean, everything is malleable. So, again, it started with a person that pretty much everybody to a T degree agrees was a thought criminal, if you will. And then it ended up with the most powerful man on the planet being kicked off Twitter. So, and that's just how it goes. So once you open that door, once you open that Pandora's box of censorship, it doesn't close, and it's not going to close. And essentially, as I've said a 1,000 times, liberalism or radical liberalism is a feelings-based abstraction that is ultimately or that is metaphorically a snake that eats its own tail. And that's what's going to happen. Twitter and Facebook and these kind of groups are drunk on their own power, and they're going to, by kicking off elected officials off of their platforms for saying things that they don't like, are going to ultimately create their own demise. And what's going to happen is, again, like echo chambers really, they're not conducive to, like, what's, in my opinion, they're not conducive to critical thinking at all. I mean, it's 100% just conformity. It's mass conformity. It's essentially, it's just a form of as Malone said, mass formation psychosis. I mean, you're just around people who who think exactly like you do. And if you can't ever challenge your thoughts, this is the problem with university now. Like, and again, like the entire problem of liberalism is it's totally eliminated critical thinking per people's feelings. And so this is a critical time, and it's, again, like the precedent was set in 2016, 2017 when everybody was kicked off Twitter and they started mass censorship. So it's again, it don't really matter what site you're on now. Now you have sites for conservatives, you have sites for like different forms of conservatives, you have sites for like leftists or liberals, and then you have just like normie sites. And the problem with like normie sites were like, I mean, the only people who are going to get on like Twitter or Facebook are just people who just really, I mean, they're 100% conformist. They're centrist for the most part, and they're just going to, kind of just go along with whatever. And this was the great part, or the great thing from an intellectual or critical thinking perspective about Twitter and Facebook and things like that, is really you only have about 10% of the population who actually has ideas. You have about 5% on the right and about 5% on the left, and then the other 90% are, and they're just talking above the heads of the other 90%, shape-shifting society. So you have these exchange of ideas between the far right and the far left, who are trying to shift the Overton window into their paradigm, and you eliminated that, because now there's no dialogue going on between the left and the right. There's no exchange of ideas between the idealists. So you just have both of those groups ostracized into echo chambers, and then you just have normies kind of just, you know, plodding along, who, you know, they don't really think anyway. They just kind of plod along, and that's how things like COVID were able to take place. The COVID hysteria that took place. You know, that's how you have these crazy ideas or these crazy things that leaves everybody scratching their heads, because you can't get critical dialogue. You just have one group leading the way for the others. So anyway, that's my thoughts for the day on Getter and on mass information. So just there goes a cop passing me by. I probably shouldn't be on my phone making videos, but anyway, y'all have a good day.